Well, next on the show, final arguments over legal recognition to same-sex marriages in India will be heard on the 18th of April by a 5-judge constitution bench, is what the Supreme Court has decided today. Any decision on the subject will have a huge bearing on society. The hearing will be live streamed, it will be on YouTube as well. This is new transparency introduced by the Supreme Court. It comes after the government argued in court that same-sex marriage is not compatible with the concept of an Indian family unit. Well, joining us now, Ranbir Singh Patania of the BJP, Deepa Rahul Ishwar, the author and activist, Raga De Silva is an LGBT influencer, also an author, and Apurva Astrani is a scriptwriter. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. Mr. Patania, let me come to you first. The government says that this same-sex marriage is not compatible with an Indian family unit. Why?
Vishnu, as per a renowned legal expert, Mr. Robinson, law is no brilliance, it is simply common sense. Law has to be reflective of the ethos, of the civilizational values, over the societal delicacies, and about the various historical perspectives also. I'll put a very simple question. Leave apart same-sex marriages. Can two persons within a spinner relation marry? Maybe one is a boy and other is a girl, they cannot marry. One boy and one girl, they are within that, if they are prohibited by a certain custom or a usage, the Hindu Marriage Act again says this marriage is again a nullity. So we want to reflect the basic and the common sentiment. There is a difference between decriminalizing same-sex marriages and then legitimizing same-sex marriages. India has evolved through a travesty of incests, invasions, cultural incests also, cultural invasions also. So the law which has been framed by the Indian lawmakers and particularly the collective wisdom of the members of the Constituent Assembly, we need to respect, we need not to violate it with such impunity and such indifference. It's not that something says like it and it needs to be reflective of the spirit of the law itself also. I'll just quote one example from Mr. Allama Iqbal. Allama Iqbal is the one who subscribed to the two-nation theory. He said, "Hai Ram ke naam pe." I'll just tell you where from the monogamy came. The monogamy, the source is Ramayana. The source is not Mahabharata. The concept of monogamy came from Ramayana. And who recognizes? Allama Iqbal. Hai Ram ke naam pe Hindostan ko naaz. So we should better appreciate, we should better understand that we should not talk of certain things which seem to frustrate the scheme of things in the Indian society, Indian state, and particularly India, so, Ranbir, as a civilization state also.
Ranbir, since you've quoted, let me also quote. You quoted one particular example. Let me quote 3 separate parts of 3 judgments in the Supreme Court, which seem to offer a different perspective. Number 1, Nalsa versus the Union of India, the Supreme Court held that our constitution protects non-binary individuals, and this protection cannot be restricted to male or female necessarily. I mean, it should be either or, right? It's not one or the other. In Puttaswamy versus Union of India, 9 judges held that sexual orientation is a facet of a person's privacy, which is a fundamental right under our constitution. Yes. In Navtej Johar versus others, homosexuals are entitled to the protection of equal laws and are entitled to be treated in society as human beings without any stigma being attached to any of them. These are all examples, Ranbir, of this being a fundamental rights issue. That fundamental right law is for you and me. It is written by our common book. That's the Constitution. That's the argument.
Vishnu, I used a very sweet and a simple argument that there is a sea of difference between decriminalizing and legitimizing. It will destroy the entire concept of, I'll just cite, where will the Domestic Violence Act go? Where will the concept of spinner relationship go? Where will the concept of marriages barred by customs and usages go? So the laws pertaining to divorce, the laws relating to partition, the laws relating to inheritance, it's a complete, I'll say, boxing the compass. It amounts to boxing the compass on it. So this is as good as placing a Frankenstein monster. This is as good as placing a cat amongst the pigeons. This is disastrous. I'll use a very harsh word. This is disastrous.
Okay.
And this is scandalous also.
Okay.
This goes against the societal norms. This goes against the very facets which constitute the basic of India as a civilization state.
Okay. Ranveer, half a second. Apurva, would you like to come in? This goes against what India is all about, is the point that the BJP has been arguing also on this program. How would you respond?
Well, I heard the spokesperson out, and to be very honest, his comments don't anger me or upset me, because these are the very comments I heard from my very father when I came out of the closet, who I loved very much, and a lot of my family members as well. There is a lot of ignorance towards what a homosexual person is about, or what his or her rights are. And I don't expect people to understand because we have been so kept in closets and hidden from society that people have begun to fear us because of their ignorance and not knowing. So you make up these stories, log aise hote, log aise hote, log aise hote. This is why the things like words like disastrous are used for human beings who are your brothers, who are your sisters, who are your vote bank, who are everything for you. You see, we contribute to civil society. What should be looked at is what kind of members of society are we, how are we contributing, and once you say that they've been criminalized, but there's a difference between criminalizing and legitimizing. There's a human being here. You are sitting on a chair trying to legitimize my very existence. I mean, that is preposterous, to be very honest with you. You cannot do that. I have a right to life just as much as you do. You have a right to marriage. You have a right to a companion. You have a right to somebody who you can share your life with, who can share some of your burdens with, who you can run a house with. Why don't I have that right? ऐसे में I'm not coming into people's homes and saying कि इसको convert करो, इसको gay बनाओ, इसको lesbian बनाओ. ऐसे थोड़ी हो सकता है, ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता है. जैसे कुदरती नहीं है तो what is कुदरती? If I am not made by the same nature as you are, then who is Kudrat? Who is sitting in a position of power saying कि मैं कुदरत हूँ और मैं legitimize नहीं करता? I disagree.
Okay, Deepa, would you like to respond to that? Basically, the central argument that Apurva makes is that all humans are equal. That being the case, he deserves his rights. Members of the LGBTQ community deserve those same rights. Respond.
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to, apologize to my, I do have friends from this community. So whatever I'm going to say, I really don't want it to hurt anyone, because I have so much of respect and so much of, there's a lot of positive feeling towards, just like anyone. Okay. So there is nothing different that way. But having said that, I would really like to bring across my point that we would, with all the respectfully disagree with this idea of same-sex marriages. See, like my fellow panelists said, decriminalization is one thing, and we were vehemently for it, and we really that was really for the good, and we supported it. But legalizing same-sex marriage in India is a huge step to take. Are we ready for it yet? That's one of the questions, because whether it is right or wrong is a different question. Another thing is, as a society, are we ready for it? What will happen to the future of such marriages? In the sense, of course, I'm talking about the generations to come, okay, about the children that comes out of it. So what is, don't you think it's going to be, it's not as easy as some of our panelists on these discussions. I've been hearing other debates as well. They make it sound so easy. Like, it is just normalize it. I mean,
no, but Deepa, no relationship is necessarily easy. So a gay relationship will be as easy or as difficult as any other relationship. If you are bringing up a child, it will be as easy or as difficult as any other relationship.
Everyone on this panel knows that it's just easier said than done. You are sitting there and making a statement which you also know that it's not really
No. I believe what I'm saying. I entirely believe what I'm saying when I say that I don't see a gay person as being different from a heterosexual person or a person who brings a gay person bringing up a child versus a heterosexual person bringing up a child. I honestly don't see the difference.
No. I have no doubts on the parenting capacity of homosexual individuals at all. Like I said, I do have friends from that community, so I'm not saying anything against that. All I'm saying is that look at the children. I mean, the society, children are not just grown up with their parents alone. They grow up in a society. So that is one point. But let's not get into that. Okay, let me come to my second point. Now, we talk about a lot of data, a lot of research, a lot of studies. But if you look at even the data and the research, I'm not saying there are many studies, but at the same time, we should be wary of the fact that there's a lot of research that is still incomplete about this. For example, maybe about, this yet to probably identify a proper gay gene as such. There might be studies for it as well. But, when you compare it with normal heterosexual individuals, that it is still an incomplete ongoing study.
All right. Deepa, half a second.
At this point.
Deepa, I think normal versus abnormal, these are... let's stick by what the court has told us, right? And the court has established normalcy, quote unquote normalcy. Let's go beyond that. But let me go to Raga, who's my next panelist this evening. And Raga, would you like to talk about the point on successful gay relationships and challenges in bringing up children? Let's try and keep it a little focused.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So we're talking here about, impurity, common sense. Those words are quite disturbing to hear actually and quite damaging, unnatural. Now, I come from a perspective, I have been married twice, once to a man. So I was in a heterosexual relationship through which I have twins who are now 25 years old. For the last 16 years after my divorce and after a few years, for the last 16 years, I have raised my children alongside my partner, a same-sex partner, a female partner. And my children have two mothers and they have a father. In our case, we say they have won a lottery. But, regardless of that, we have what you call a normal family structure. They have two parents and they have been raised by two parents. Now, in our case, of course, there's a third parent as well. Are my children any different to anybody else? I'm the same mother. I raised the children whether I was going to be with my husband or I'm now with my wife, let's say, because I'm legally married in the UK. I'm the same person. Do you talk to me about normalcy or not being normal? There are challenges. As a family, we are faced with so many challenges. Nobody can ever say that it seems easy. For you, when we have these conversations, it may look easy. It is not easy at all. As a parent, married to a man once, it wasn't easy. As a parent, married to a woman now, it's not easy at all. We have the same set of challenges you face. In fact, the challenges are worse because we're constantly having to justify, oh, two women, so how do you raise your children? Are your children normal? I constantly get asked whether my children are gay as well, because there's an assumption, because people, like some of yourself here, have misinformation that studies, which I don't know what kind of studies people read these genes. I've been hearing this conversation for the last 24 hours. There is no such study which says that we have a gay genes or lesbian genes. There are no such genes at all. There's no such studies. I think this is the way of keeping patriarchy and the patriarchal system in place so that men can continue to say, I am the boss, and women like yourself continue to be under that regime. That's all it is. It's keeping that culture intact.
Okay, Raga. Ranbir, again, if there is a debate, we already have, and we all have to respect what the court has to say. We can disagree with it. But let's look at what the court said. A quote from Puttaswamy versus Union of India. Sexual orientation is an essential attribute of privacy. Discrimination against an individual on the basis of sexual orientation is deeply offensive to the dignity and self-worth of the individual. Equality demands that sexual orientation of each individual in society must be protected on an even platform. Those who are seeking marriage to a same-sex partner are just wanting that protection on an even platform. Is this not common sense?
No, Vishnu. I'll again reiterate for third time before this channel that there's a sea of difference between decriminalizing and legitimizing same-sex marriages. So the gospel, if allowed, this destroys the very idiom and the grammar of the Hindu Marriage Act, the idiom and the grammar of the Special Marriage Act, the Foreigners Marriage Act. I again reiterate, law has to be reflective of the local customs, usages and the social practices also. So this amounts to putting a cat amongst the pigeon. This is a disastrous idea. With due respect, this is every fundamental right, and especially Article 21 each is subject to certain reasonable restrictions. So having a particular sexual orientation or a sexual liking or a disliking, this is a matter of choice. But once do you want to pigeonhole within the framework of the legal permissibility. I'll just quote one instance. You have a painting, you can canvas, you can put anything on the canvas, but you cannot go outside the canvas. This amounts to going outside the canvas. This amounts to creating a chaos-like situation. So I restrict my argument to the point that the India as a society, India as a civilization state, and India as a legal system neither permits. It will amount to create another, I could say, disaster, but I used earlier also. So there's no point in following this argument, which is as good as going like a greedy person in a blind alley. This will lead us to a blind alley. We need not, we should not, and I hopefully that Supreme Court also would not subscribe to this idea, which is not worth even considering. Let's see.
Okay, Ranbir, let's get a response to that.
That's it.
Let's get a response to that. Apurva, would you like to reply? Go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Pathania speaks very eloquently, and I'm almost tempted to, believe what he's saying here. But I think a point that was made by Deepa a little earlier, one of her points I do agree with. These things are not, done overnight. Society also has to change. And, there is work that we're all doing as artists, storytellers, filmmakers, citizens, to put out, our side of the story, and things are changing. But that doesn't mean that we stop trying. It doesn't mean that we work against that change. In fact, we need to contribute to how society deals with this change. And coming back to Mr. Pathania's statements, and even what Deepa was saying about children, we have to think about them and all of that. You must understand that children today are far more open-minded, well-read, and have a lot more information and a lot more experiences than we had at that age. Myself, yourself, all of us included. They are far more aware and far more accepting of, different identities and different forms of expression. In fact, the problem will be if we try and pigeonhole and box children into this kind of archaic thinking that comes from some act and law that has been enacted after the British have brought their Victorian values here for more than 200 years, which said that this was gospel and this was criminal and this must be stoned and, all of that. Are we actually, without realizing, and I make no accusations against anyone here, I think everybody does come from the right place, but are we as a society trying to enforce a Saudi Arabian concept or something that says कि यहाँ पे जो था वो हमेशा ही रहेगा, ये evolve नहीं हो सकता? And imagine our children going out onto the world stage where the whole world is evolved, और हम तो पर्दे में बैठेंगे. You see?
Okay.
So this is
Okay, let me just get the last word in for Deepa, because I have 2 minutes left. I've 33 democracies around the world have recognized same-sex marriage and civil unions. That's something that's mentioned in one of the petitions filed in the Supreme Court today. And I think the point that Apurva makes is that, look, we need to evolve as well. Yes, there's been a tradition in the past. That doesn't mean it's still relevant now. It doesn't mean it's necessarily right. If it's a question of rights, then why not just stick to freedom of rights, which is what is enshrined in our constitution. We can't debate that. I mean, we can debate it, but we can't contradict it.
No, I mean, that's the whole question. I mean, that's what I was talking about in my opening remarks as well. I mean, there are still a lot of questions around this. I mean, we can't just say that something is right or something is wrong without actually having a lot of solid, proof and data to support. If you look at any species, we're talking about human species here, legalizing marriages. If you look at animal species, what's the percentage of homosexuality or homosexual animals as such? So we all on this panel should agree to the fact that this is definitely a deviation. And anything that has a deviation is something that is still in the debates, it's still questionable. And in that scenario, this is a huge step to take. And I think we should take it a little slow, and we should allow it to evolve according to whether it is right or wrong in future. I think it's too soon, it's too quick to take such a huge step if at all this goes through by the Honorable Supreme Court. That's what I'd like to say.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up over here. It's been an incredibly polite discussion, and I really welcome the fact that we can have different perspectives and viewpoints over here. But I think it is the court which will decide. And I do believe that those who ultimately argue that, look, it's not the courts who should be deciding this, but the legislature, I think they need to look at a couple of lines from Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India. That's a judgment which decriminalized same-sex relationships. And I'm just going to read out one line. Another argument raised on behalf of the interveners is that change in society, if any, can be reflected by amending laws by the elected representatives of the people. This is likely to be an argument that the government brings up in the Supreme Court. But to this, in this particular case, the court has already said such an argument must be emphatically rejected. The very purpose of fundamental rights in the Constitution of India is to withdraw the subject of liberty and dignity of the individual and place such a subject beyond the reach of majoritarian governments so that constitutional morality can be applied by this court to give effect to the rights, among others, of discrete and insular minorities. Bottom line, you cannot take away fundamental freedoms. It's there not just in the Constitution, it's there in judgments of the Supreme Court. Anyhow, we'll leave it over there. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us.